Hi, I'm John Bates, Range Ecologist with the Ag Research Service at the Eastern Oregon Ag Research Center. This week for the Ag Minute, I will focus on quaking aspen woodlands, specifically why they are important and what we can do about managing them and keeping them part of the landscape. Aspen woodlands are found throughout the interior mountains of the western United States and Canada. These woodlands occupy relatively small areas within this vast region. It is estimated that aspen occupies only about 7 million acres out of roughly 800 million acres comprising the western United States. In our region of eastern Oregon, the percentage area occupied by aspen is probably even lower. However, though small in area, aspen woodlands have a big impact ecologically and for resource use. They provide very important habitat to many wildlife species and contain a high diversity of understory plants. The understory can provide an important forage base for livestock and big game. Today's topic, the importance of aspen ecologically and for resource use. Ecologically, aspen communities serve many important functions. Aspen is of major importance in providing wildlife habitat throughout the year due to production of high-quality forages, furnishing rearing sites, particularly for migratory songbirds and tree cavity nesters, and in providing escape cover. In one study, 135 species of birds and 55 species of mammals were identified as using aspen woodlands. These areas also provide a reliable forage resource for domestic livestock when managed properly. Forage production is highly variable depending on geographic location, site characteristics, and year effects such as drought. In our region, it can be expected that understory production in intact aspen stands will range from about 300 pounds per acre to over 2,500 pounds per acre. These values tend to be greater than sagebrush steppe communities. Across the western United States, quaking aspen woodlands have been on the decline. The decline is primarily a result of the lack of fire, which has permitted aspen stands to be replaced by conifer forest. In our region, almost all aspen stands below 7,000 feet are being replaced by conifers, including ponderosa pine, fir, and western juniper. Because the above-ground aspen stem is relatively short-lived, dying out at about 120 to 200 years of age, fire is good for aspen. Fire historically moved through these stands at infrequent intervals, probably once or twice a century, and killed competing conifers and old deccan and aspen, thus stimulating aspen regeneration by root sprouting. Root sprouting is a key survival mechanism of aspen in response to fire, allowing the plant to produce a wealth of vigorous new stems from an extensive root system and thus reoccupy the site. The replacement of aspen by conifers has several negative outcomes. There is a loss of wildlife habitat, especially for migratory songbirds. Forage production for wild and domestic herbivores may be reduced by 100 to 600%. There is also evidence indicating that water yields are reduced when conifers replace aspen. Fire historically was the main method for aspen to regenerate. Fire killed competing conifers and old aspen and stimulated aspen regeneration from stems sprouting from the parent root system. We can use the same principles today in restoring aspen woodlands, either by allowing natural fires to burn, by applying prescribed fire, or by clear cutting. An above-ground kill of at least 80 to 90% of the adult aspen trees is required to obtain an effective sprouting response. Sprouting by aspen is on the order of 10,000 to 60,000 sprouts per acre after fire or clear cutting. Over time, as trees develop and self-thinning occurs, the number of stems is reduced to a few thousand per acre. You can also expect a 2 to 4-fold increase in forage or browse production in years immediately following fire or cutting. Understory production may taper off as aspen sprouts develop into trees. Aspen regeneration can be suppressed by excessive browsing by big game or livestock. Aspen takes about 2 to 5 years to grow to 5 to 6 feet in height, after which browsing impacts are negligible. A recommendation for reducing browsing in small treated areas with high concentrations of big game is to construct temporary exclosures. Another recommendation is to treat large areas when burning, which may disperse animals across the landscape, thus reducing concentrations on individual sites and permitting recovery of aspen stands. Today we will wrap up this week's discussion on quaking aspen, focusing on some local efforts to restore aspen woodlands invaded by western juniper. A difficulty in regenerating aspen with fire is that there is often a lack of ground fuels to carry fire, and fuel moisture content is often high, making it at times difficult to burn. To solve this, cured fuels can be created by selectively cutting juniper within stands and allowing the cut trees to dry. These cured fuels will carry fire through aspen stands, kill remaining live juniper, and stimulate aspen regeneration. Working with Burns BLM and local landowners, we have developed several combination cutting and prescribed fire studies in Oregon and Idaho. We found that cutting a fifth to a third of the juniper trees was adequate to carry fire and kill remaining live juniper when prescribed burned in the fall. These burns also stimulated an 8-fold increase in aspen resprouting. This method of selectively cutting juniper, followed by prescribed fire, also works well in restoring sagebrush grassland and riparian communities invaded by juniper. I'm John Bates. Thanks for listening to the Oregon Ag Minute.